Hello, everyone out there in Facebook land. I'm Jill Valley from KPAX-TV in Missoula, and thanks for joining us. For the next couple of minutes, we're actually going to be talking about going safely back to school. We're going to be emphasizing our children's mental and emotional health as this new school year approaches. We all know things are very different out there with COVID-19 considerations. Our kids will be in classrooms where the desks are farther apart. Most likely, some of them may have to wear masks. There's going to be a lot of hand sanitizer all over the place. Even the bus ride to school might be different as well. And the school days might be structured. So what we're used to every fall and how school days go is probably going to look a lot different. So there's a lot of unknowns at this point. Now, we know some kids are fine with this. They have no trouble adjusting, but there are others who might have some struggles in adjusting to what has become, and I hate to say it, but the new normal and the new changes that we're going to have to experience during the school year. So we thought we would empower parents by giving them some ideas on how to talk to their kids and how to reassure them. We have brought in Dr. Robert Velin. He is a neuropsychologist from Western Montana. He works with children. We have consulted with him in the past on issues regarding our young kids and their mental health, and he's going to help us get some good advice for parents in this strange time that we're in. So welcome and thank you so much for joining us this evening, Doctor.
Thank you, Jill. It's always a pleasure to be with you. I appreciate you having me back again.
Oh, you bet. Well, so the summertime impacts of COVID have been one thing, but now the talk about going back to school is ramping up and the school districts are coming up with their plans and it's going to look different. What can parents do to help transition their kids, no matter what age they are, into what will no doubt be a very different school year this year because of this pandemic?
Yeah, this is going to be a very different year for everyone, and certainly not just for parents, but also for the kids. And one of the most important things that we can do as parents, as grandparents, and family members is also to remain calm ourselves and be reassuring. Kids look to us, even when we don't think they're watching. They're great little barometers of stress levels of their parents. And this is something that, it's going to be new for everybody. But as parents, if we can approach this in a calm and a reassuring fashion, that's going to go a long way in helping kind of normalize this for our children. The more anxious we are, the more anxious they're going to be. And we could say the corollary is also true in the sense that the calmer we are, in general, the calmer our kids are going to be with us.
I happened to just see a CNN article that popped up on my feed today that talked about how some kids might actually be afraid to go back to school. Do you think they're getting that from the media and maybe from the adults? And how do you tell them it's scary because they don't know what a virus is? They don't know how it spreads. How do you reassure them this is going to be okay?
Yeah, our kids have a lot of information coming at them, a lot more than we've had historically. And they see things on the internet, they see things on TV, they hear parents talking. This is everywhere, right? And so kids get a lot of input, and it can be very overwhelming for kids. Again, what we can do is be very reassuring that school officials, other people are making good decisions, that we're taking the steps that are needed to try to keep kids as safe as possible. And there's opt-outs as well. But again, we need to be cautious with those opt-outs. That is, we don't want to opt out and make anxiety worse from every little fear, because there's risk in the world. So what we want to do is encourage our kids that the people who are in decision-making positions are making good decisions to try to make it as safe for them as possible, and that this is also going to be a stepwise fashion. That the biggest thing really will just be the newness of this, the novelty of all of this.
If you're watching right now on Facebook and anybody has a question about dealing with stress or helping your kid adjust, be sure to type it in and we will ask Dr. Velin about that. Now, a lot of people have a very specific way. We have such timelines in our life. We know what's happening, for summer vacation, and then here comes school, and then there's the holidays. Well, we all know that the fall is about going back to school. Our schedules go back to what we're used to. You talk a little bit about how important flexibility is going to be over the next few months as we go back to school. Talk about that a little bit.
That's one of the parts about even being calm and reassuring, but it's an added part, which is this is an excellent opportunity for us to show our kids that things change and we have to adjust. This is an opportunity for us to model flexibility in the way we're going through our day, the way we're doing school, the way we do work, and how we have to be creative in doing that. And there's parts of that that can be very fun as well. And if we can focus on some of the fun and the novel aspects, the positive, challenging aspects of this, rather than just the dangers that are out there, it's something that can be looked on very positively by kids.
Can that even be something like shopping together for some fun masks, just to say, hey, here you go, let's fill your backpack with your favorite cartoon character on your face?
Absolutely. This is where, again, as parents, we can, if you will, make lemonade out of lemons. We can find ways to make this more normal, more pleasant, more positive. Certainly there are parts of it that aren't, but there can be parts that we can make more fun and more natural for our kids. And doing that will go a long way in terms of reducing their anxiety and their fear.
And is it okay to talk to them about, how this all began? What is a virus? How does it spread? I know there's some age appropriateness when it comes to talking about, the attributes of a pandemic and what that is and why our parents or people in the media or people on Facebook are so upset about masks, that type of thing. It sounds like being really honest about what this is will maybe help alleviate some fears or at least give them enough information to adjust.
Absolutely, Jill. It's very important that as adults, we're open and honest with our kids about this. Now, again, as you mentioned, we need to be age appropriate, but basic information about what it is we're dealing with and what's happening is very important. And in fact, being open and honest is so important because many kids will be afraid to bring this up. They're dealing with it, they're struggling with it, but they may not know how to articulate that or bring it up or whether it's even okay to do that. And so as parents, being open and honest and starting that conversation can be the first step in really making this a positive process for the kids.
And let them know it's okay to ask any question you want, because I'm sure they've heard all sorts of things that are true or not true about what it is to have COVID-19. So let them ask away. And we talked about being flexible, but also there is some value to keeping a family routine that would help give them some comfort as everything else changes. Maybe some things in their own home or in the way that their families shapes their life is still going to give them some reassurance. Not everything is going off the rails here.
Absolutely. One of the things that we know about all of us, but particularly kids, is they need structure. And so to the extent that parents and grandparents and others in the family unit can create this structure for kids, it's going to be a new structure, but a structure for them. If they do art at school, then do art at home. Have a set time when they do their homework at home. If they're doing lessons online, have a set time when they do that. That's going to go a long way in terms of, again, reducing a lot of the stress. A lot of anxiety and fear has to do with, I don't know what's going to happen next. So simply having some of that structure in place reduces some of that fear and anxiety, and it makes it much easier for kids and us as adults to deal with the other changes that come along and are naturally stressful.
I guess it's okay to acknowledge to them we don't know what's coming next either. I mean, we know that school districts have plans, but those could change based on coronavirus numbers. What's going to happen if somebody in their school ends up testing positive? So tell them it's an adventure and you're part of history, I guess. But understanding that sometimes when they get, so upset, it's easy to give them their iPad, watch your favorite show for a half an hour and calm down. But we do have to be careful about the screen time and the self-soothing that may bring for them as an exclusive way of dealing with this.
Yeah, and this is a situation where, I think parents and as family members, we can be a little bit more generous with screen time than we have in the past because there's a lot of time that has to be filled. But at the same time, we have to still monitor that. And we also have to monitor what do they have access to. Again, we don't need so much information or information that's not credible that just continues to fuel fears. So we have to find a good balance. Let them be entertained some because we do have this time on our hands that we didn't have before that other events took up, right? And we have to do something with those kids, but make sure the screen doesn't start replacing. There's a lot of other things that we can do with our children, and we want to go back to that flexible and creative part and find creative ways to spend time and get them to engage in activities. So if they're going to spend some screen time, also have some time then that they're doing art or they're doing something creative, they're doing journaling, they're doing something else outside of just being on electronics.
I always thought journaling would be good this time so they can look back at it in 20 years when they have families and say, this is what happened during this pandemic. Can you believe this? We should also
Absolutely.
talk about parents, okay? Because there's single parents out there. They may have multiple children who go to all these different schools, and every school day might be structured differently. They're trying to also hold down a job, and that routine that parents need in order to get the kids to school and go to work could very well be disrupted. And that adds great anxiety. We already know a lot of people were either seeing reduced hours or maybe on unemployment because they lost their job for this. So how do parents take care of themselves so they can in turn take care of their kids, emotionally speaking?
That's an excellent point, Jill. And one of the things that I'm really encouraging parents during this time is to take care of themselves and stay connected. Again, that takes some flexibility and some creativity, but exercise, social activities to the extent that you can, taking time out, finding folks that can help, because this is a time where there's been a lot of isolation. Until a few weeks ago, a lot of people were very isolated. And now we've loosened things up a little bit. We don't know where that's going to go. So just taking care of ourselves will be important, because that also helps us cope more effectively as parents, which helps us stay calm and reassuring to our kids. And a little bit of self-care can go a long, long way. It doesn't have to be a situation where a parent feels guilty about this, because even just a half hour, 45 minutes for themselves that they wouldn't otherwise take can help them be a much more effective parent, in the sense that they're not so worn out and stressed during these very challenging times.
So we've been into this for several months now, and I think there is some stress that we're all feeling. I think I've gone through days where you just feel way out of sorts. And I think a lot of people feel that. Anecdotally, I've talked to other people that this pandemic, even though we should maybe start getting used to it, is still derailing our emotions a little bit because it's exhausting. I guess, does it help to acknowledge that so many people feel that exact same way?
Absolutely. And my advice to parents is, remember, your kids' behaviors are likely to change with all of this as well. They aren't doing the things that they normally did. You've got adolescents who are stuck home. You've got peri-adolescents that are stuck home and don't have sports. Even birthday parties and other activities have shifted. And so it's not unusual for your kids' behavior to change. Now pay attention to that and understand that that's normal. But if they start to get too fearful, if they start to get too withdrawn, they start to get too anxious, then it's probably time to contact your pediatrician or a local mental health professional, just to make sure that this isn't becoming problematic. But we do expect changes in these kids. And so every little change we don't have to be worried about as parents. But if it starts interfering too much, then we certainly want to get some professional input.
Does sound like you got to talk to your kids and talk to them often and ask them more than once. How are you feeling? What did you hear today? What have you heard about this pandemic? Like, is it bothering you in any way? And I think a lot of times you can ask them out and they'll say, nothing, fine. But I think if you keep asking, eventually they may open up a little bit, and that could help a parent see a little bit more as to how their child is dealing with this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What my advice at this point is for parents is communicate, and then talk about communicating with your kids, because things are changing so rapidly during the day, even for kids. If you just keep this as an opportunity, a running conversation, not necessarily coronavirus, but how are we doing? How are you doing? What are we doing next? How are we managing this? How are we going to structure things? Just keep this part of the process. It's going to help everybody to a large degree, because kids may be open to talking about it at 3 p.m, but they weren't at 10 a.m. And so we catch them at that right time.
Yeah. Isn't that the trick for parents, right? And we
Yeah.
talked a little bit about this. Yes, this has been challenging and things are changing, but as human beings, we have an amazing ability to adapt. And that's what we're having to do here. We're testing that theory full bore.
Absolutely. We have to go back and look at what we are best at as humans, and that is, all other things considered, adaptability. And this is simply a time where we're having to adapt. It doesn't matter whether we like it or whether we don't like it. We're going to have to adapt one way or the other, so we can choose to do it well or we can choose to do it poorly. And this is an opportunity for us to realize that in our core DNA, the way we were created, we're designed to be adaptable. And this is an excellent opportunity for us to model for our kids how that adaptability works. And that's a lesson that will go on, boy, throughout life, because we do that continually. That's not limited to this time of COVID-19. That will go on and on. This is just a great practice for that adaptability.
So maybe there's a silver lining in the experience that we're having now. If we employ some of these things, these again aren't just COVID specific, they're life specific. So maybe in the end, we'll end up having better communication with our children overall.
Absolutely. That's the hope, is we can use this positively because it's here. So we might as well get through it well, manage it well, and learn how to do it well, because it will not only take care of this issue, but whatever else comes down the line. And boy, with kids, they will continue to surprise us because we will have more stressors.
We will, and then we'll see what happens when we're about a month into school. We may be having another conversation about how are we adapting to what we thought was going to happen in a time that we didn't know before. You know what I mean? It's just this cycle of, I wish I knew what was going to happen. And I imagine a lot of people are also feeling that same way. Any other points that you want to make? I think we did a great job covering this, but you have the floor if there's a way you want to conclude our conversation here this afternoon.
You know, one of the things to particularly keep in mind are our special needs kids during this time, kids with ADHD, autism, and other things. This is a time where we have to be particularly thoughtful about these kids. And there can be disruptions in therapies. There can be other things. Now, each district is going to handle that somewhat differently. But this, again, is a time where if somebody is losing those resources through their school, it will be very important to talk to their pediatrician or mental health providers to try to keep some of those therapies going. Now, I think most of the districts are doing a phenomenal job of trying to find a way to maintain those kind of therapies. But for special needs kids, there's a whole new level of complexity with this, and creativity is really going to be in the center of that.
Imagine they're feeling the isolation that they've had to experience a lot more than some other kids who may have more resources as well. And I know parents really look to the schools to help with special needs kids. And I assume there's probably a plan for that demographic to get back to school safely as well.
Yes.
So that's good. Again, that's just another stressor that parents are having to think of. It seems like every school district is different. Every family is different. And we're all trying to find our way through what is an extraordinarily and unprecedented time, at least in modern history.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. I think maybe also communicating with your school. And if you have any questions for the schools, maybe they can help families work through this. And you feel that it is appropriate at some point, if you feel a child is struggling, to maybe seek out professional help if it gets to be too overwhelming for them.
Absolutely. Parents should always feel free to reach out to their pediatrician or family practice doctor or a local mental health provider. The American Psychological Association has some great resources online as well that parents can look at. There's a lot of resources out there to help us through this time. And I don't want parents to feel isolated because we're already in a period of time where we feel isolated. But there's a lot of good information, a lot of good supports out there. It's just accessing those, but they're available.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Velin. We really appreciate your guidance once again. And again, we'll probably be checking in with you in the next couple of months to see how this is all going. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching on Facebook. We hope that you got some valuable information as we are heading back to school in about a month. It's going to be very different, but good communication. We're all in it together, and we'll see how it goes. Thank you for